think one of my favorite things that I've learned that took me forever to get down was just like in life, like slow down to like really speed up. Not like so reactionary, and it's more like proactive. And I feel like in entrepreneurship, like being proactive versus reactive is so key and so important. But when you're building and doing all the things and wearing all of the hats, it can feel very exhausting sometimes. So I feel like the menstrual cycle is kind of like that built-in blueprint of like, okay, if I just follow this, what could possibly happen, and kind of take inventory week to week.
Hello, you guys. Welcome to another episode of my Wine and Design podcast. I'm so excited for today's episode. It's been something that I am really passionate about. I don't talk about it a lot, but it's something that I have gone on my own self-discovery with, and that I truthfully feel is so important. And without health and wellness and all those things, we don't have anything. Without that, we literally don't have anything. And I was reminded of this last week because I got sick. I had like a cold. I don't know what it was, but it was kicking my butt. And it was so hard to do anything but just give my body and time to like heal and feel better and rest. And I was like, you know what? Without health, we literally have nothing. Like, we won't be able to work. We won't be able to show up for ourselves. Like, it's so important. So I really want to have more guests on and make more episodes revolved around those things that are making us like a completely full person. Like, just if you have your business and you're an entrepreneur, or maybe you're an influencer or any of those things, like that's all awesome. But if you are behind the scenes, not happy, not healthy, like truthfully, none of that matters. So I really want to focus in on the things that I feel that have helped me show up as my best and just feel overall really, really good. And one of those things is balancing hormones, especially for women. We have a really complex like body and hormone system. It's like, I still don't know everything about it, which is why I have the guest on today. I'm so excited for you guys to hear her talk, but hormones for women are really, really interesting. I find them fascinating. I find women's health in general fascinating. I always say if I were to go back to school, that would be something I would love to get into. But I've done my own I've used myself as like a case study because I've had issues and struggled with balancing hormones, and it would affect me in a lot of different ways. So I thought I'd share with you guys a little bit of my story before we jump into the podcast, because I feel like I didn't really share the whole reason I want to talk about this very much on the podcast. So I wanted to share with you guys too, because maybe you can relate to like where I was at. But so I'm 29 years old. When I was in high school, I realize, and by the way, I'm going to be very open. I'm an open book with this kind of stuff. I really don't find it like taboo or anything. Like, it's part of life, but I'll be talking about like periods and stuff like that. So if you're not interested in that, totally understand, but I want to be an open book. So in high school, I never naturally had my period. I was in a state of wanting, it was like during that time when we didn't really have social media, but the most popular thing was to be skinny. Also, I want to give a little trigger warning. If you have an eating disorder or anything like that, then maybe don't watch this, because I'm going to be talking about like the struggles I had. And I think that's the reason that my hormones were a little out of whack for a while. But when I was in high school, I definitely had eating issues. I was working out like crazy. I would run so much, like to the point where I would run after soccer practice, after lacrosse practice. I'd go to the gym. I just always was trying to move my body because I wanted to be like thin and skinny. And that was like so important to me. And during this time, I wasn't really eating as much as I probably should have been, especially for the activity that I was outputting and everything. And basically, I realized I had never had my period. And that led me into actually getting a stress fracture during one of my soccer games. And I also played lacrosse. And it was really, really sad because it was my senior year of playing for the high school and I could not even play. So I was kind of forced to rest. I was forced to heal my body. And unfortunately, actually, looking back, I don't know how else we would have handled this really, but I feel like there wasn't a lot of education around like birth control and hormones and stuff like that. I just thought something was wrong with me. So got on birth control, and I never got off birth control for, I think, close to 8 to 10 years, really, really long time. Might even be more than that, to be honest. But I got on that to help me start my cycle, which looking back now, I know that's not even a real cycle. So kind of a crazy solution, but I felt like I was getting back to normal, especially giving my body rest from all the crazy workouts I was doing. So I kind of struggled with all that kind of stuff for a long time. Like in college and everything, I still wasn't I didn't have a good relationship with food. I didn't understand my body very well. I didn't really take the time to get to know like actually how my body functions. And so about 4 years ago, I think it was like 4 years ago. Time is flying, but about 4 years ago, I decided that I was so sick and tired of the ups and down moods. And I also was experiencing really, really interesting like IBS symptoms, which I've never had before. But it was to the point where I would eat like a salad and I did not feel good after. I was like, what is wrong with me? I'm eating healthy. Like, I just did not feel like myself. And there was moments where I felt sad for no explanation at all. So I decided to get off birth control. I was like, what else can I do to just I want to feel like myself? So I got off birth control, and to be honest, it was such a good decision for me at the time because I finally felt like myself, and actually like getting off of it was a whole other process in itself. Like I was feeling like I actually felt like my body was changing in a way. Really, really interesting. I don't know the science behind that, but I got off of it and I finally started to feel like more myself. I didn't have those random little crying spells and stuff like that. And I met with holistic doctors, functional medicine doctors, and learned my body from like the inside out. I wanted to know the cycle, how my hormones can affect my mood and how I show up, not only just in life, but in business. And that's why I wanted to share this with you guys, because if you don't have your hormones figured out or your health figured out, it's going to be really hard to be your 100% best, optimized, happiest self. So I decided to learn my body, learn the cycle, learn the moods that come with the cycle, and it just opened up this whole world of like women's health. And like I said in the beginning, I'm so fascinated by it. And I wish so much that it was talked about more like with doctors and stuff. And I don't know, I think birth control is an amazing tool, and it's really great that we have that. But I think that needs to be more education around like how it can really, really affect you. It can affect your mood. It can affect your digestive system, which I did not know. It can affect all that. So I feel like it was a whole journey of trying to learn that myself. But I'm going to bring this back around to the guest because I don't want this to be super long. But I actually got in contact with Shay. She was moving back into town, and she reached out to me about getting together, and we actually ended up working together. I did her branding design, and it was such a fun project. And she is a women's health like coach. She knows all about hormones. She's amazing at all of this stuff. Like she knows the cycle inside and out, and she's just so great at explaining it in like a really digestible way. So I wanted to have Shay on the podcast to share how like hormones can affect you in business, how it can affect women business owners, and how you can actually like take that and honor your body and like respect your body more, and just learn your body to a point where you know like which weeks you might be the most creative, or you might be the best on video, and then which weeks you might not want to do that. You might want to just crawl into your little cave and like just relax. So anyway, I want to wrap this up because I want you guys to meet Shay, hear her talk. It was such a good podcast. I'm so excited that I had her on. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the episode, and I will leave all of her links down below in the description of the podcast and stuff. But I hope you all enjoy the episode, and I hope that hearing my story kind of makes a little more sense as to why. I know this is kind of like it seems like a random topic to bring into this like channel. But to be very honest, I don't think it's as random as it might seem because it's so important. It's like the root of how we can show up in business. So anyway, without further ado, I hope you all enjoy the podcast episode. I would love to just start with having you kind of say who you are, kind of how you got passionate with hormones and helping like women with their hormone balancing, and just kind of share your passion and how you got started.
I always kind of say it's threefold. I I guess I discovered like therapy and stuff like that first, which really opened up kind of just like this healing journey.
Yeah.
And through that, I got really obsessed with nutrition and just like learning about holistic beauty and things like that. And I was going through my own health journey where it's like my gut health was all over the place. I was feeling like constantly bloated. My skin was breaking out like crazy, like really bad, horrible, painful cystic acne, which was then like affecting my
Yeah.
self-esteem.
Yeah.
And then I had eczema. I had developed eczema really randomly. So I was
Okay.
going through like all of these things all at once, which is now in hindsight kind of similar to the onset of an autoimmune condition, which usually is an inflammation of something going on with the body, typically the thyroid. And then what I
Yeah.
didn't know was that thyroid health is very, very much linked to hormonal health. And at this point in time, when I was experiencing all of that, I was on birth control, I think maybe 11 or 12 years at that point. So it'd been a long
Yeah.
time. I got put
Yeah.
on it in high school because I had the worst kind of cramps that would make me feel like I was going to vomit. I had to like skip school. So that's why I had gone on
God.
birth control and just stayed on it because that's what was normal and taught.
Yeah. Yeah.
And somehow, some way, I always feel like the universe has like synchronicities where it's just like, oh, I came across an article that was talking about long-term effects of birth control because more and more research had been going into it because there was a lot of unexplained health issues for women.
Yeah.
And so I read this article and I was like, interesting. And I just had this like gut feeling where I was like, I think
Yeah.
maybe all of my symptoms and everything going on has to do with birth control because the doctors kept telling me that I was fine. I
Yeah.
was like, clearly not fine now.
So frustrating.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I decided to come off of birth control and I had like to talk to my partner at that time and be like, I think I want to try this out and I'm going to learn, like what I need to do to prevent pregnancy because obviously we were
Yeah.
scared of like things like that.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
that was like a conversation in itself while I was also like going through this healing journey, decided to come off of it. And within like 3 to 4 months, all of those weird, unexplained symptoms from the doctors, they just went away.
That's
And
crazy.
so, come to find when I was finally like studying hormonal health at this point, because I was like, okay, like what are my hormones going to do? Someone had suggested the book Woman Code,
Yeah.
and it's by Alyssa Vitti, and she does incredible work for women's health. She had reversed her PCOS symptoms, and I just really learned from her, and she became a mentor. And so I
Amazing.
was like, oh, I really like this hormonal health stuff. And I was like taking myself kind of on my own health coaching journey, but I didn't realize it at the time because I didn't know that industry existed. So
Yeah.
I was kind of studying on my own, implementing things on my own. And I feel like night and day difference. I noticed so much changed in my menstrual health, in my overall mental health, and then also just like my physical health. And I was like, okay, I really like this. And that's how I discovered
Yeah.
health coaching, decided to completely pivot careers,
Yeah.
decided to go to school and fully own them. Like I have a passionate passion for like women's health, specifically like menstrual and fertility health.
Yeah.
And as I was going through that, I think like the real thing that created my mission was I had actually been going through this like 5 year HPV journey.
Yeah.
And so I was like diagnosed at age, I think like 21 or 22, and there was this whole stigma around it. And I just felt like a
Yeah.
lot of shame and embarrassment and had to move through some of those pieces. And they just didn't have a lot of information available at that time when I was diagnosed. But my
Yeah.
body didn't really heal for until like 5 years later. So it had
Wow.
progressed for me. And they had actually wanted me to remove my cervix completely. I was
Wow.
26 years old when it happened. So I was like, I don't know if I want to have kids or not yet. And they're like,
Yeah.
well, you should know if you want to have kids, like you're kind of in your late 20s. Like there was this whole thing with just like the doctor's
So
office,
hard.
all of that, and just being in your 20s, you're just like still figuring out who you are.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that had all happened, and I just had this like breakdown moment when I had got that news where I was like, something is not like right in my hormonal health. And
Yeah.
I was like, I want to give my body the best chance to first and foremost heal the HPV, but then secondary, wanted to make sure that I was doing what I could, that if I wanted to be a mom at some point in the future,
Yeah.
I was doing the things that I needed to do in order to be able to do that. And that's when I went through this like even deeper rabbit hole, started working with an herbalist, healed my HPV, and I was like, okay, well, like now I'm on a mission to teach other women this and
Yeah.
really empower women, especially like us millennials who are just like maybe
Yeah.
you and your partner aren't ready to have kids yet, or maybe you're pursuing a career, or maybe you still haven't found the right partner. And it's just like this pressure of the timeline, which I think
Yeah.
we all experience in different ways, but women then have that biological clock timeline that puts a lot of pressure on them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I really just want to like empower women to realize that when you are working on your menstrual and fertility health and living your life in accordance to your cyclical nature, like you can preserve those years, you can age more gracefully, you can feel
Yeah.
better, all the things unlock.
It's so amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love talking about this stuff too because I feel like I kind of went on a journey myself to figure out my hormones because
Yeah.
when I was in high school, I like never had a natural period. Like I just all my
Yeah.
friends did. I never did. And I didn't really realize at first like that was like a bad thing until I brought it up to the doctor and they kind of started to do a little more testing to like see what was going on.
Yeah.
But the main answer was to put me on birth control. So same thing, like high
Usually
school,
it.
got
Yeah.
on birth control and I was on it for like for a really long time, I think like 11, 12 years too. And then I think it was like in 2017 or something, I was experiencing like really weird like kind of what you said, like bloating and almost like IBS symptoms. Like my stomach just never
Mhm.
felt right. And
Yeah.
I was like, what is causing this? Because I was eating super healthy. I was trying to do all the things to like fix it. And I
Same.
went through different birth controls and like trying different brands and all the things. And then eventually I kind of just came to that decision too, where I was like, I think I just need to get off this and feel how my natural body feels.
Hmm.
And I feel like I don't know. I feel like sometimes when people want to be like entrepreneurs and like start their business, I feel like if I was who I was back then, when I was experiencing that exhaustion and the bloating and just not my 100% self, it would have been really hard to show up and like do
Oh
the
yeah.
things all the time. So that's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to have you on was to talk about like, because I'm still learning the cycles and like how you feel different during those different phases of your cycle. And I would love to kind of just like talk about how to like honor that and like maybe just a breakdown of like the cycles that we go through as a woman and like the mental parts of it too that we kind of go through. So I think it's important to keep that in
Yeah.
mind also. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think knowing kind of your natural energetic brain power and productivity that comes from the four phases is so key in entrepreneurship, or even if you have a regular day job, but you're also pursuing entrepreneurship, because I know a lot of people are
Yeah,
doing that as well.
definitely. Yeah.
And energy management's important for anything in life, of course, but
Yeah.
way that I like to teach the four phases, and other people may have heard kind of this analogy, is kind of the same way that you would think of the seasons we move through on planet Earth, which is,
Yeah.
we're like, I think this week is actually the spring equinox. So we're moving into spring season, but um, the menstrual cycle starts on the very first day that you bleed, like no spotting, anything like that. The very first full day of your period is considered day one. I didn't know that when I had started my journey. I always thought day
Yeah.
one, like when you were finished bleeding.
I know,
But
it's confusing. I thought the same
yeah,
thing.
exactly. So I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. So the menstrual cycle, a new cycle starts on day one when you have that first bleed.
Yeah.
And that's what I call your inner winter, which is your menstruation phase. It can
Yeah.
last anywhere between 3 to 5 days. Typically, when we think of our earth winter season, we're like hibernating a little bit. We've slowed down. The energy is not so outward, like you're inside more, just kind of like
Yeah.
cozy comfort vibes.
Yeah.
it's usually colder outside. You're wanting to eat more like soups or warming foods or like hot cocoa and like craving chocolate and things like that. That's essentially
Yeah.
what's happening hormonally as well. Your body internally would be considered like cold.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're experiencing kind of that slowing down, that inwardness. I
Yeah.
equate this to just allowing yourself to be. It could be like a couch potato time where you're just like, I
Yeah.
just watch movies and be cozy. I don't want to like use my brain too much and things like
Yeah.
that. That's totally okay. So as much as you possibly can, kind of let the first 48 hours of your bleed happen without needing or feeling obligated to do anything is going to allow you to actually unlock so much more productivity once your bleed is finished. And then
Yeah.
from there, you move into your inner spring, which is also your follicular phase. There's this moment, especially if you are not on any form of hormonal birth control, that there's this shift of energy that happens, and it's because your estrogen starts to rise again, and you just kind of
Hmm.
feel like I'm ready to be, I'm open again. Like even right
Yeah.
now, I feel like the last 2 days has been beautiful. And I think people are just like, I want to
Yeah.
be outside and like warmer weather is coming. And I'm just like so
Exactly.
happy because the sun is out. That's essentially what your hormones are creating energetically for you in terms of the menstrual cycle, where in follicular phase, you're a little more ready and on to like be in the world again, to start getting into activity. You're like excited to get into work again, maybe or create and all of those things. You kind of
Yeah.
enter planning mode. I consider this kind of your like get shit done era
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
your cognitive function, which is really just your brain, like a fancy way of saying your brain power, is actually at
Yeah.
its peak. So you are able to sustain working for longer periods of time without your brain just feeling like dead or like you're reaching this wall. So it's the
Yeah.
best time to kind of start planning out your month, like really front loading that first week post bleed on all of your most important tasks where like you really need your brain and planning mode on. And especially if you're like an entrepreneur or business owner, this is like the time to do the snapshot of maybe like the next 30 days. What are
Yeah.
your most important projects? How do you want to break down the rest of your month? Great time to kind of use this phase for that.
Yeah.
And then follicular phase builds into your inner summer, also your ovulatory phase, which is when you release an egg. This is the most vibrant time of the cycle. You also have the best stress response. So if your plate is really full or you have a very full day or to-do list or social obligations or things like that, your body can adapt and handle it much better without feeling too burnt out. Like you just are able to tap into those energetic reserves more. So in the entrepreneurial space, I always say it's the best time to do all of your creative projects, maybe your content batching, filming all of your podcasts, filming your YouTube
Yeah.
videos, filming your reels, TikToks, whatever it is, doing all your ideation phase, maybe if you're a course creator, like this is the best time to start like film modules, things like that, because you're going, everything that's happening internally, you want to express it externally. So it's the best time to kind of harness the power of your hormones during that phase. Or
Yeah.
even like networking events or things like that is a great time to kind of plan around this time of your cycle. And
Yeah.
then you move into your inner fall, which is your luteal phase and probably the most misunderstood time of the cycle because it's women experience PMS and it can be like the problem child time. And so during this time, I consider it like your life audit era
Mhm.
because what's happening is your body is asking you to slow down. It's literally preparing to bleed, kind of like when a bear prepares for wintertime and it's gathering all the things that it needs to do to just rest. That's
Yeah.
essentially what your body is asking you to do too. So it's not necessarily the best time to like be doing and like pushing against what your energy is wanting. Like some days you might have that same energy and then other days you might just want to slow down and be like, I don't want to do anything.
Yeah.
But it is a really great time for critical thinking. So when you're
That's
reviewing
interesting.
things that like did or didn't work for you that month, did or didn't work in client interactions, did or didn't work in your content, it's a great time to kind of like analyze those KPIs or like maybe how your business is running. Like, are things working efficiently? Because what your cognitive function, which again is your brain power, is really letting you know, like, this is a yes or this is a no. And it's going to be very obvious depending on your mood because we can be a little more irritable or more aware. And we're just
Mhm.
like, ugh. Like, you just get those moments where you're just like, this is not working.
Yeah.
And so that is because of what your hormones are doing. So it is a great time to kind of like take stock of what is and isn't working in your life and your business and all of that good stuff. And maybe just doing lighter tasks. It can still be creative in the sense that maybe you're thinking of like, these are some projects that maybe I want to work on next month, or these are some ideas I have for a course, or some ideas for content, or something different that I want to try in my business. It's a good time to kind of like brainstorm like that, but not necessarily like be
Yeah.
doing, and that like external energy that you need in entrepreneurship. But
Yeah.
it is great to, again, like reassess, redesign, reevaluate how that month went for you. And then it comes full
Yeah.
circle back to menstruation and you start the process all over again. So typically it'll be anywhere between like 25 to 35 days for most people. Your cycle is unique to you. So there's not like an exact amount of days that is right or wrong. But if you're
Yeah.
operating between that 25 to 35-day cycle, then you're in a good spot.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It's like interesting because as you're saying that, I could literally picture the moments where I would have like all these ideas and I like want to film for YouTube and want to
Yeah.
do this. And then like this last week, I didn't want to do anything because it's like the luteal phase. And also like
Yeah.
I was so honest with everybody, like to the point where I was like, nope, that's not gonna work. This is gonna work. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is definitely like it matches up and it's kind of nice when you know like what to expect for that week too. Like I'll say no to like more like meetings and kind of just like you
Exactly.
said, yeah,
Yeah.
like relax. And I feel like for a really long time, I like would stress about doing everything all the time. And it wasn't until I started to like give myself rest and like listen to my body that I felt like everything kind of aligned a lot more in my life. Just
For
like
sure.
I
Yeah.
felt better and I felt like I kind of took that pressure off once I kind of understood the cycle. But there's a lot of things you said in there that I was like, I didn't know, I didn't really realize that. Like the ovulation phase, you can kind of like take advantage of that too and
Yeah.
do a lot of
Just
those things.
different ways to harness what our bodies are doing. And I think one of my favorite things that I've learned that took me forever to get
Yeah.
down was just like in life, some like slow down to like really speed up. And
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
our cycle as females just really kind of encourage us to slow down, which in turn will actually help you speed up the process of everything else you want to do because you're not like so reactionary and it's more like
Yeah.
proactive. And I feel like in entrepreneurship, like being proactive versus reactive is so key and so important.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when you're building and doing all the things and wearing all of the hats, it can feel very exhausting sometimes. So I feel like the menstrual cycle is kind of like that built-in blueprint of like, okay, if I just follow
Yeah.
this, what could possibly happen and kind of take inventory week to week.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. And if like somebody came to you and they're like maybe on birth control, but they really want to figure out how to start to balance their hormones, would you recommend? Because I feel like everyone's such a unique case, like with
Yeah.
what they're doing and everything. But I guess how would you guide someone that like has no idea where to begin and like how to really start understanding like their unique cycle?
Yeah, so with birth control, the pill specifically, you
Yeah,
don't have a real menstrual cycle and you don't have a real period, which I thought was very interesting. But they built it
yeah,
that way because to not bleed at all is foreign to women, even
yeah,
if they are like don't love it. I know some people don't love having their period because of the symptoms that it brings, but if you are on some sort of form of hormonal birth control, whether that's the pill or the IUD, you likely won't experience these four phases the same way. If you're on like the copper IUD, you might, and you can kind of work with your cycle more. And then, of course, if you're off of any sort of birth control, you'll definitely be experiencing these four phases for the most part.
yeah,
And I always say the easiest way to start kind of working with your cycle and like healing and giving your body that chance to find like hormonal balance is through nutrition and then energy and stress management. Like if you only did those three things, you would create such a domino effect.
yeah,
Nutrition, I feel like is so mainstream. Everyone's kind of really into their health and like eating well and stuff like that. So
yeah,
the biggest thing that I teach my clients when it comes to nutrition is if you are eating whole foods and increasing your vegetables and eating the rainbow and like doing your best to minimize like things that trigger your body, like dairy or sugar or alcohol. Sometimes caffeine can be a trigger for people.
Yeah.
Then you're already setting yourself up for success. And then to take it a step further for your hormonal health, breaking up the way in which you cook or eat your food. So really simple. The very first half of your cycle, so this would be follicular phase and ovulation, right when you're done bleeding, your digestion and metabolism are slightly different than when you are in your menstruation and luteal phase. So you're not as hungry. Your digestion's a little bit quicker, so it can handle like raw foods or not as many like cooked meals or smoothies and things like that, but your metabolism is slower, so you don't need as much food. So thinking of how you eat in spring and summertime, typically we're eating more fruits or salads and smoothies and juices and like those lighter type of foods. And of course, like you're having your protein sources and things like that. So that's how you would break down how you'd categorize your food. And then
Yeah.
in your luteal and your menstruation phase, your digestion metabolism are the opposite. So digestion is a little bit quicker. And then so is your metabolism. So
Okay.
you are actually hungry more. So that's why some people experience kind of like constantly be starving in luteal phase. It's because your metabolism is a little bit quicker. So it's breaking down the food a lot quicker because your body needs the extra micronutrients because you're preparing to bleed. And that's where I equate like you're like a bear preparing for winter. It's your
Yeah.
body being like, you need to feed me more. So breakfast is really, really key. I know I feel like in today's modern age, not a lot of people prioritize breakfast, but for your hormonal health, it's super, super important. And the way that I've
Yeah.
taught it is having some sort of protein source. The amount of protein you eat per meal is going to be different, but a good rule of thumb is if you stay full for at least 4 hours, then you ate enough protein. If you are
Okay.
hungry before those 4 hours, then you probably didn't eat enough protein in your meals.
Yeah.
And because that can be measured differently depending on the individual. So you want a protein source, you want some sort of veggies, you want some sort of anti-inflammatory fat, and then a nutrient-dense carb, especially during luteal and menstruation. Then if you're eating like that throughout the rest of your cycle, not necessarily all in one plate, but kind of hitting all of those food categories, you'll be in
Yeah.
a really, really good spot. But if you just prioritize breakfast during those phases with that in mind, and then eating as consistently as you can from that point forward, you're going to have a really solid like nutrition plan that's going to support your hormones. It'll sustain your energy. Like if you're someone who experiences fatigue during the luteal phase or menstruation, or just like, I just don't have energy to get up out of bed or like do the work I need to do, and just
Yeah.
kind of losing steam, that is one way to kind of offset it is through your food. And then energy and stress management. Energy is pretty simple. Like if you're following your natural energetic cues, just like I explained earlier in the cycle, you'll
Hmm.
experience a lot less burnout throughout your months. And then stress management, we're going to be stressed on some level. We're human
Yeah.
beings,
Yeah.
but whatever you can do throughout your days and weeks, even if it's just like taking 5 minutes to kind of disconnect and breathe and like ground back into your body, we operate so
Hmm.
much from our head, kind of slowing down enough to allow yourself to feel like you're in Zen mode or peaceful. That will
Yeah.
lower your cortisol levels so much, which is going to help your overall like hormonal makeup throughout your days and month. And that's going to be so
Yeah.
supportive for you over the long term. So there's just like some
Yeah.
simple, easy things that just keep capable of doing.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful also to hear about like the nutrition and how our digestion changes and everything. Like, I never really realized how it can kind of change through the cycle, but that makes so much sense too. Like, because sometimes I'll feel like I'm craving all the things, and then sometimes I'm
Yeah.
like not hungry. So, yeah, that makes me feel a lot better too, knowing that that's like normal.
Yeah.
Um, I know that I've seen you posting too, like caffeine and stuff, like, because I'm sure a lot of people know I'm a big coffee fan,
Yeah.
but I do know, I remember you saying something about like maybe caffeine during certain times might not help that much with like the cycle or might make you feel a little off or something, but I'd love to kind of get your advice on that too.
Yeah. So the interesting thing with coffee and how well you metabolize it is actually because of your genetics.
Okay.
So genetically speaking, you will either be able to metabolize coffee really well or not. Like you could do a test, but you'll know. I feel like if you're someone who
Yeah.
can kind of get anxiety or get sleep issues over long-term use of coffee, like get the shakes and stuff, then you
Yeah.
likely don't metabolize it well. That is me, which is really sad because I love coffee. But I
Yeah.
have to like fully do decaf. It's also just like very acidic from a nutritional standpoint. So if you
Yeah.
are needing to like heal your gut health on top of
Yeah.
your hormones, it's likely just causing chaos for you.
Yeah.
But with coffee, a good rule of thumb, generally speaking, is having it during late follicular phase, like maybe those 4 days before your potential ovulation window. Late follicular phase through ovulation, because your body can adapt to the stress response much easier and better and metabolize the coffee better after a big meal, then
Okay.
you're putting yourself in a better position. And then also, generally speaking, 90 minutes after you wake up is a better time to drink coffee, and usually after a balanced meal. And
Okay.
that will
Yeah.
help your body kind of process and metabolize it in a way that's not going to cause like the triggers you might experience. And just kind
Yeah.
of like taking note of that. If you are someone who has like fatigue or some consistent PMS symptoms, I would definitely stay away from it during your luteal and menstruation phase, or at a minimum, cut it out for 30 days, kind of test how your body feels. I know that's like
Yeah.
really hard for some people, but
Yeah.
once you kind of notice how you feel better, especially in like your PMS symptoms and your sleeping and even your productivity and you're working with your natural energy reserves, you'll just be like, okay, it's worth it to feel this way versus like have that
Yeah.
cup of coffee.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that makes total sense. I know that's kind of the mindset I had to have when I decided to go off birth control too, was like just feeling good was so important
Yeah.
to me that I was like, I can figure out the rest and like make that work into my life because I wanted to feel what it actually felt like to go through a cycle and yeah,
Yeah.
like have all that happen and everything. And I'm really glad I did that. But I was gonna ask you too. I like recently went to the doctor, and this is why hormones and stuff has been on my mind because I went to the doctor because I was having like a lot of pain during my ovulation phase.
Mm.
And it was like frustrating to me because usually my ovulation phase was when I was like feeling the best and like,
Yeah.
yeah. And so it felt like almost 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks out of the month, I felt like I was having like weird symptoms and stuff. But every time I'd go to the doctor, they would try and get me back on birth control or basically tell me that it's normal to feel that way. But I think it's so hard sometimes because it's like hard to know what is normal and stuff. But yeah, anyway, I was going to share that because I feel like I felt a little bit alone in that because I was like, I don't really know what that means. And then they ended up saying it's like middle schmerz or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say there
Yeah.
is this thing. I
Yeah.
can never pronounce it. It's spelled super
I
funky.
know. When I
But
first saw the
there,
name, I was like, what is this?
yeah, it's ovulatory pain, and it's usually just because the way your egg is growing and pushing against like your ovary, it's creating kind of like cramps. It's not the same kind of cramps that you feel when you're about to bleed, but it's different. It's kind of like it's like a throb because I've gotten
Yeah.
it sometimes where it's just like this uncomfortable throb that can sometimes create bloating. And there's not a lot of like research as to like why that necessarily happens because it's
Yeah.
not usually something bad. At least in everything that I've ever learned is not necessarily like a bad thing. It's just something that happens.
Yeah.
My theory is that if your body was like stressed or you're experiencing stress during that cycle and it happens to
Yeah.
be close to ovulation, it's like developing in the ovaries because our
Yeah.
body can like hold stress. That's my theory. There's no sound data on that, but
That makes
I've
sense
found
though.
I've found that like on months that I'm just like in it in terms of like
Yeah.
work or life things or emotionally, I can sometimes get ovulation cramping. It's few and far between, but I also find that like hydrating a lot has helped me during that
Okay.
time, giving my
Yeah.
like ovaries gentle massages, and
Yeah.
things that, especially if you're experiencing it kind of consistently. That's when I think experiencing anything consistently is telling us something. So those
Yeah.
are some things that I've done, but I've not learned anything necessarily like negative about that
Yeah.
happening. ovulation. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes me feel better too. Because I was like, I do feel like I need to drink a lot more water. And I feel like stress management's a huge thing, like with just anything in life. And I feel like that's kind of why I started doing like Pilates and stuff like that. And you're teaching yoga now, right? Or like some Pure Bar type of
Yeah,
workouts. Yeah.
so I teach at Studio Sculpt in Reno. So
Awesome.
I'm now at a new place. It's like a bar Pilates infused class with
That's
like its own
amazing.
unique twist. And then we do have like a couple like yoga sculpt things where you can, it's slower, but I guess it'd be kind of more like a core power yoga class.
Yeah.
Um, where
Yeah.
you're still focused on like strengthening, defining, toning, but it's slower movement, not as like intense as like Pilates or
Yeah. Yeah.
it can be. And then we have like our own like cardio circuit version of it as well. So it's been super fun to do.
That's awesome. Would you
Yeah.
say that like working out, because I know like sometimes weightlifting and stuff can maybe spike the cortisol? I don't know. I feel like I heard that before. I
Yeah,
don't know if I'm
that
right,
is,
but
yeah, that's definitely true.
yeah.
Cortisol levels are unique just because lots of various things can spike it. Working out can too, but that's not necessarily like a bad thing.
Yeah.
But when it kind of comes to like hormonal health and finding what like your rhythm of harmony is,
Mhm.
syncing your workouts while you're like regulating your hormones if you're experiencing consistent symptoms or like pretty shitty cycles
Yeah.
is going to be important to do at least for your first like 90 days because it's going to help you balance everything out. So the thing with the menstrual cycle is so many people view it as just like this one isolated thing of women's health, but actually your menstrual cycle is governs five other key systems in our
Yeah.
body that are also important. So that is stress response. That's, of course, your reproductive health, your immune system, your digestion and metabolism, and your cognitive function, so your brain health.
Yeah.
So just because you think you're focusing on one thing, it's like actually no, it's a domino effect. If your menstrual cycle is functioning properly, then those five other systems, I don't know, I keep
Yeah.
saying those five
Yeah.
other systems are also functioning properly. And those
Yeah.
obviously govern so many other things. So stress response is also like emotional regulation, your anxiety, your mental
Yeah.
health.
Yeah.
So with workouts, if you're pushing your body, it's a great thing because building that like muscle strength and of course like toning and all that's healthy for us just as overall physical well-being. But with your hormonal health, pushing your body like that and weightlifting and stuff is better done during like follicular and ovulation, and then maybe lightening the load a little bit or listening to your body during luteal or menstruation. It's not to say
Yeah.
like don't do that, but if you're needing the rest or you're experiencing fatigue and your body is going through things, and maybe taking that off of your plate during those couple phases for a little while, just while your
Yeah.
body recalibrates, is a good thing to do. But
Okay. Yeah.
weightlifting's super important for females because we lose like bone density and muscle mass as we get older, and it's a lot harder for us to put it on. So the sooner
Yeah.
you do start like weightlifting those heavier weights, it's actually increasing your longevity in terms of like our muscle mass and bone health long term. So it is
Yeah.
important to incorporate still.
Yeah, I was wondering that because there are, I feel like I've tried to be a little more intuitive with like what my body is craving during those weeks. And it's
Yeah.
interesting because like during the luteal phase or like right before my period, it's like all I want to do is like Pilates or yoga or just like calmer
Mhm. Very
workouts.
normal. Yeah, very
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah. It's kind of fun when you can be like in touch with like your body and like what it really wants that week. But
Yeah.
and also another thing that kind of spiked my interest with like hormones and all this is when I didn't have my period and I wasn't really weightlifting or anything, I was just like running a lot. Like I was like trying to be a runner and I was playing a lot of sports and stuff.
Yeah.
I ended up getting a stress fracture because I didn't have good bone density, I think was what they were saying.
Yeah.
And like my calcium was low, like a lot of things were just like out of whack in my body and everything. But that's kind of what interested me in starting like weightlifting and like doing those types of workouts too, is like it's just like crazy. They don't tell you a lot of these things until you go through it.
Yeah, it's
But
like
yeah.
unfortunately until you're sick or experiencing something, then they're like, oh, well, here's all this education that probably could help you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's why I think what you're doing is amazing because it's so helpful to know like, how our bodies work and stuff. But
Yeah, yeah, I definitely think it's been life-changing for me. So I'm like, if this is me and I've been in my body, I think when I started this, I was like 28. So I was like,
yeah,
28
yeah.
years old and I didn't know any of this and I'm a
It's
female.
crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I feel like a lot of us are kind of in that phase now where it's like, okay, now I really want to know how my body actually works. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. And another thing that I did last year was I did like this panel, like blood test kind of thing. And this is what kind of had me thinking about like entrepreneurs and how business owners and stuff, or those who are working 9 to 5 and building their business on the
Yeah.
side, because I would be working at night and like I don't really know a whole lot of the science behind like blue light and stuff, but one of the things that the holistic doctor I met with talked about was when I was on my laptop at night, like 8 p.m. at night to like 10 p.m. at night, it was affecting like my cortisol and my sleep. And like
Yeah.
on the test that we did, it was like my cortisol like spiked at night and then it was really hard for me to get going in the morning. And I was in this bad cycle of like drinking coffee right away and then like getting back into
Yeah.
it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like that was my goal this year was like, okay, shut off all the blue light like when the sun goes down. It's so hard though when you're like
It's
trying to
hard.
do. It's so hard. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Circadian rhythm health is always so fascinating to me
Yeah.
because I've messed my sleep cycle up before just because the way our world is set up, it's not really helpful.
I know.
And
Yeah.
then we're like constantly exposed to blue light. And I know that it's just not natural. Like if we think of way before all of this stuff existed, like people had to like use candles at night to like be able
Yeah.
to away.
Mhm.
And that's like your natural circadian rhythm. So like your sleep hormones are functioning optimally, but now like we have blue light in like our regular house lights. We have blue light that comes from our phone, our computers, our TV.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so now being exposed to all that technology, our circadian rhythms get interrupted. So we have to be like that much more intentional to be able to have a consistent sleep cycle. I
Yeah.
forget what the book is that I read that taught me about like our circadian rhythm, and we all kind of have slightly different clocks and like the best time we operate, the times we go to bed, and like what constitutes like a night owl or a morning person. And
Yeah.
then like I wanted to learn it to like how it's conducive to the hormones because they kind of go hand in hand. But I have blue light blockers. I do my best to kind of 2 hours before when I want to go to bed, I start dimming the lights or I turn them
Yeah.
off. And I do like red light therapy now, where I just like have red light bulbs all through my
Smart.
house. So
Yeah.
I can still like go around my house and do things at night,
Yeah.
but not the blue light because the red light is more, it's mimicking kind of like nighttime and it helps you with your hormone support. It's more peaceful for our body and it can help you kind of start to come down so that your natural melatonin levels are increasing at night and your cortisol
Yeah.
levels go down instead of creating kind of that like constant go, go, go. And then you have trouble sleeping and then you're just like
Yeah.
exhausted in the morning. And then instead of turning lights on in the morning, I turn my red lights as well. So I wake up and I go to bed with my
Smart.
red lights. And I've noticed a huge, huge difference in terms of like sleep and setting my circadian rhythm up for success. So that's something
So
that
smart.
I
Yeah.
do and I've like learned if it's helpful for anyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's super smart. I feel like I want to change all my bulbs now because, yeah, it's like crazy how we don't even think about like the blue light that's around us and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And
Um,
I there's like blue light blockers and there's settings on like your computer and stuff now if like you have to
yeah.
work late at night. I know those like tips and tricks. It's small, but it does help.
Yeah, definitely. I actually just like watched a video on how to like change my phone to red light. Like I just like hit this
Ooh.
button now and that's been helpful because it's hard to I feel like night times when I do my like scroll like when I want to catch up on like
Yeah,
what's going
yeah.
on online. But yeah, that kind of helps me out a little bit to not feel super like guilty about consuming the blue light.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's super helpful. One of the other questions I had for myself too was, do you have recommendations for like because I remember you telling me about some cocoa powder, a cacao powder, like any sort of like supplements or things that women could like implement into their daily routine. I know everyone's different, but anything that's helped
Yeah.
you that maybe people can do at home also.
Yeah, for sure. I would say magnesium, like magnesium citrate specifically, like the one that's meant for like peaceful rest and stress response, is
Yeah.
something that everyone should take.
Yeah.
We don't get enough magnesium through our diet, and just given how stressful like being a human can be sometimes nowadays, I think it's one of those supplements that everyone can take, and it's also very, very helpful to the hormones. It'll be very
Yeah.
helpful to like sleeping and things like that. I do drink this Four Sigmatic has a reishi cacao that you can drink. Mainly
Yeah.
I'd say for like evening time because the reishi kind of like relaxes you and like zens you out. So I like to drink it like a handful of times throughout the week. Is just like it's tastes like chocolate. It's really yummy.
It sounds
So
good.
I'll just like drink that as like kind of my nighttime routine, and it's just delicious. It's fun. It has adaptogenics. Adaptogenics are very helpful for just stress response. It has herbs that naturally help you adapt to just like everyday stressors in life. And reishi
Yeah.
is the calming one. So it's really good for just creating that like peaceful type of environment for you internally, which will of course transpire externally.
Yeah.
Um, there is a company that I started working with called Lunarsync, and it
Okay.
was developed by an herbalist and an MD who does integrative medicine, but she specifically specializes in like women's health and fertility and menstrual cycle health. So
Yeah.
she has a formula that you take one a day, and it has different like herbs and vitamins and minerals that your body consistently needs to replenish all throughout your menstrual cycle, depending on the phase that you are in. And it's gentle to take like forever because of the way it's
That's cool.
formulated, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Um, See and feel the compound effects after 90 days. But once I discovered her company, I was like, oh my gosh, I definitely recommend that to like all my clients and friends. So
Yeah.
I can give you like a code for anyone that like listens to this because it's
Yeah.
another supplement that I have kind of in my arsenal. And then probiotics is another one that I really suggest. My
Okay.
personal favorite brands are Seed or
Yeah.
Organic Olivia. She has a probiotic that's really amazing as well. And then I would say if you are someone who's experiencing like burnout or a lot of stress and you're like in that entrepreneurial field, the reason I say this is Organic
Yeah.
Livia also has an adrenal recovery formula, which is
Okay.
herbs that help with your adrenals, which combats like fatigue, stress as well. So you don't have to take it all the time, but if you're just like
Yeah.
in a period of just like needing to hustle a little bit,
Yeah.
then it's a great one to kind of help support with that. And then she also has something called liver juice, which is a little tincture that you could take either during your luteal phase or right after, or no, luteal phase. Yeah. Take it
Yeah.
during luteal phase because our liver is a super important organ for many reasons. But when it comes to hormonal health specifically, detoxifying that specific organ will help kind of eliminate some of the hormone stuff that you're experiencing. But there's also a load of other benefits for your overall health as well. So those I would say are good
Yeah.
general ones that everyone can take and kind of play with. Uh,
Okay. Yeah.
and yeah, everything else that I would know would it'd be like symptom specific.
Yeah. No, that's super helpful. I would love the links so I can like share that with everyone
Yeah,
too.
I will. I'll send
Yeah.
them to you.
That'd be awesome. Because I walked into like the grocery store the other day because I wanted to start probiotics and there was like
So many.
hundreds. Yeah. I was like, where do
Yeah.
I don't even know. Yeah. So that'd be awesome. I can include those links. That'd be great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll send it to
Thank you. Thank you
you.
so much. Thank you so much, though. This
Yeah,
has been like helpful for me, and I am sure a lot of other people too that maybe are interested in starting to balance their hormones or learn more about their cycle. And I know
yeah,
it's really hard when there's a lot going on in the world. And like you mentioned, like we live in the world where it's kind of stressful and it's like go, go, go all the time. But I do feel like hormones and health is like without it, like we wouldn't be able to do anything or have
anything.
anything. Like
Exactly.
it's,
Yeah.
we need it. So yeah, this has been really helpful. But I'd love if you could share like how people can learn more, if they can work with you, and like where they can find more about you as well.
Yeah, so specifically for my menstrual and fertility work, I mainly hang out in Instagram world. So I have my Flirty, Fertile, and Thriving page. That's where you'll find all of my like women's health stuff, and brands that I work with on that page. And then my other Instagram page is really like mindset and overall nutrition and more like naturopathic stuff. So they go hand in hand, but I'd have them separate for a reason.
Yeah.
And that's just Shay Frago. So I'll definitely give you guys that. And I'm always kind of on Instagram. I'm kind of taking a little bit of a social media break just for my own like mental health right now. But
Yeah.
I have a lot of fun stuff coming up over the next few months and things that you guys can plug into in terms of overall nutrition, women's health, and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And I love your podcast, Vita. That's the name,
Yeah.
right? So
Yes,
go
Vita's
check out the podcast too. It's really fun. But thank you so much. Honestly, this has
Yeah,
been so
of course.
good.
Enjoy. If any questions pop up, just DM me.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you all for watching this episode. Like I said, I hope that you enjoyed it. I'm so glad I was able to have Shay on, and definitely go check out all of her Instagram, her website, everything like that. She has amazing tips, and all the links and stuff I will leave in the description box. But I really hope that you enjoyed this episode and that maybe it shed some light on hormones and the things that we go through as women, and how we need to be more mindful of that and honor that, and not beat yourself up. If you're feeling down one day, it could potentially be because of your hormones, and we need to just honor that and kind of work around it. And I think once you do that and you figure out your body and you learn your body and you put your health first, that a lot of other things fall into place. And I've noticed that with myself. I feel like in the best place I've been in a while because I took the time to learn how my body functions and what makes my body happy. So anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this episode. And if you did, I would appreciate it so much if you either subscribe to my YouTube channel, go check it out on Spotify if you are not there already. And I will see you all in my next one.